Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of The Inspired Life Vancouver. I'm your host Zara Durrani. I'm so excited and honored to bring some amazing humans on our show. Hopefully, each conversation leaves you feeling inspired, motivated to perhaps follow your own dreams. Joining me right now, I'm so excited to welcome someone who I feel whose journey I've witnessed from the beginning until now, and her career has just exploded in the best way possible. I remember 65 Red Roses, which went on to OWN, and then it was on Netflix as well as Hulu. And currently, you're just coming back from the Banff Media Festival. You were there, you had a great Banff visit, and you also just wrapped Under the Bridge, among many other projects. Lastly, I saw you on Motherland that you were directing. I'm talking about none other than the award-winning writer, producer, and director, Nimisha Mukerjee. Nimisha, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Fantastic.
Good to be here. Good to be here with you. It's been so long. Actually.
I know. Amazing. And, we were talking earlier. I was at your guys' wedding.
Yeah, I know. It's like I was trying to, how many years have we been married? Almost 10 years. So next year will be 10 years.
Oh, that is
so 9 years ago that happened.
Cool. And I remember going to Harbor Dance for your bachelorette.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
That was so...
You probably remember it better than I do. I don't know if I remember it.
I remember it. I had so fun, and I loved your wedding invitations. Like on my Facebook, I still get the memory, and I remember posting, this is what happens when two filmmakers get married. Your invites were amazing. The music and the whole vibe was just so bright. Like your guys' families were so beautiful. And you and Mark are just like two really bright, creative souls.
Thanks. So I think, I'm very lucky. I got to, I met my person, and Mark is a filmmaker. And the invite, we were just talking about it the other day, the invite being a collection of all the stop motion books that he had made for me over the years. So it was a really cool way of getting to show that all that hard work Mark did over the years, and then he proposed to me through those books. So
that's the sweetest thing. Now, with everyone who comes on the show, I always like to ask, to be a writer, director, producer, filmmaker, did you always imagine, since you were a kid? Because you've had a career that spanned quite some time, and you've gone on to work on some very exciting projects. And, it's great to see you in action. But did you imagine this when you were in film school or when you were a teenager, that, hey, this is going to be me, directing in these cozy coats and the rain, and working with these big crews? Did you imagine is this something that you visualized back in the day?
I think that, I always loved storytelling and writing, and, being a young girl, it's called, sometimes it's called being bossy if you like to be in a leadership role. I come from that kind of time. So knowing that I liked to organize things and put things together and execute a vision, that was all very much a part of who I was from a young age. But I think that the film and television industry, if you don't know someone who's in it, it can seem very exclusive. It can seem like an exclusive club that you don't really understand what are the steps to get in. And so I don't think I ever really thought of it as a viable career option. I knew I loved movies. I worked at Rogers Video. I loved movies, but by the time I went to university, I directed some theater. I directed some high school stuff, short films, but I never really thought, okay, that's what I'm going to be able to do with my life, tell stories full time. And then just through kind of stroke of luck, through going to UBC and being at the University of British Columbia, and I think that's part of the joy of being able to get a higher education. My parents, supported me going to university. I stumbled into film by taking it as an elective, and then realized there was this incredible film production program. And then I applied to that program, which only accepted like 15 people a year, and Lynn Stopwich had come from that program, Mina Shum, so like some really notable Canadian directors had come out of that program. And then I applied, and then I didn't get in. I was 16. They took the top 15. I was 16. And because of that is when I really made the decision I'm going to become a filmmaker. And that initial rejection is what really drove me to like reapply to the program. And I got in, met my husband, met my first film partner, Philip Lyle, through the UBC, and like have great friends through that program. And that really set me off to like start actively pursuing a career in film. And once I made that decision, there was like no backup plan. Once I made that decision, it was like, okay, I'm doing this. This is what I'm going to be doing with my life.
That's amazing. It's interesting because I'm going to share that story with my sister-in-law, who just did her LSAT, and then she got the rejection letter from UBC, and she was asking them, and I just saw her over the weekend. So I'm going to share this story with her. So thank you for sharing that. Backtracking, 65 Red Roses, Oprah, all of that. That was amazing.
It was, and I think it was amazing because, again, and like you, Zara, from very early on, I know we connected, and you've always, talked about living your life with intention. And I think that the reason that film really worked out was that the motivation behind making 65 Red Roses was about trying to make a positive difference in the world beyond just, the ego of being like, I get to make my first film, I get to make my first feature. It was really motivated by, there's this incredible story. This is a platform to use the story to hopefully do something good. And because I think all of our whole team, we were aligned in what we were trying to do, in the sense that we knew we wanted to do something that was meaningful, and we were willing to put our whole hearts into it and make a lot of sacrifices to make sure that film was made the way we wanted to make it. The success of the film in some ways was this wonderful addition to the fact that we just made a film we really believed in, and then shared it in the way that we just really wanted that message to carry on. And people, we were lucky, connected to the message of organ donation and supporting cystic fibrosis research. And then the stretch of that, led all the way to Oprah. And then meeting Oprah was about then how do we then go further, and like her vision of, making sure it was released during National Organ Donation Month, and making sure that platform just continued to grow beyond Canada and then beyond America internationally, to really, a difficult story, about a young woman who was in need of an organ transplant. But that reach of that story, I think, was like amazing to watch at 25 years old, to see like, wow, this story, because we all worked together and loved the story so much, it actually had an impact.
I remember when you gave me a copy of that, and I remember watching it and just bawling. It's obviously the way it's a real life story. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember watching it and just, it was so moving. It's so well made. And I had to like pause. Like I was like full on ugly, crying, snot running, everything, because it's a real person who is going through that. And the way that you have made that film, it really takes you in beyond the medium of like, it just made me feel like I was there and I'm getting to witness what this person is going through, and the fact that they were so young going through that. So, I mean,
documentaries are access, and we had incredible access, and Ava Markfort and Meg and Kina, her friends, who gave us access to their lives. Like, we were able to capture something really special. I was just thinking the other day, like, we captured, the moment that her pager went off for Ava, like basically saying, you're going to have this opportunity now to get a second chance at life. Like, again, I think the reason that happened, the reason we were there, the reason we had the access was because, again, I used to often say this, because we went in with such a clear, like so clearly motivated by trying to do good. And I honestly think that certain things just fell into place because our intention was so clear. Because it's just, in some of those circumstances, it's just sheer luck. Like you're in the right place at the right time. So yeah, I think that when you go into something for the right reasons, often things start to fall into place.
That's very well said. I want to talk a little bit about the recent project that you wrapped, Under the Bridge. Again, also based on a true story.
Yes.
And I remember when I moved to Canada in 2000, but even then, I believe it was still in the news, like the Rena Verk story. And what was the process like for you, like working on something? You were mentioning earlier that she was the same age as you, like, all of this, like the bullying and what it was like for her to be this South Asian woman going to high school. I know for me, I came to Canada at 17, but I still did a year of high school here.
Right.
And coming from Pakistan, even though I already spoke English, culture was very different.
Of course.
Even though my family had lived across Asia, I was quite familiar with, my cousins were all here. I was quite familiar with the culture here, yet at the same time, it takes you time to get settled in.
Of course.
And you moved from Toronto out this way, and so did like Rena. So I want to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, Under the Bridge is the story of Rena Verk, but it's also the story of the journalist that picked up the story, and then, and it's about the girls as well, the perpetrators who were Rena's friends, and so I think when I was, doing the meeting to try to see if this was a good fit, this project, I mean, I definitely connected to the material on like a very, very personal level because, I remembered Rena's story. In some ways, I tried to forget Rena's story because I think probably now as an adult and as a mom and as someone who is like, in a lot of ways gotten the chance to like fulfill like a lot of their dreams. Like, I think that Rena's story was always this like dark sort of reminder of the feeling of like you're the other, you're unwanted, you can't trust those around you because they're, there's a sense, and as a woman, seeing how girls treat girls, women treat women, the bullying of it, I think you're in some ways, there was this sort of ghost of Rena that, appeared when I sat down to prepare for the first initial meeting about the project. And then really like not wanting to look at that because it's like it took me back to being 14 again. And I've always said like Lord of the Flies, if that was a series with young girls, they wouldn't have to kill Piggy. They would make Piggy kill herself because girls are incredibly, I think that the reason that story became so huge was less because of Rena, but more because there was such a shock and outcry that these beautiful white girls from good home, in some cases very good homes, how could they do something like this? Like that part of that story is I think what really shocked people versus, who Rena was and what Rena went through. And to me, it was really important just approaching the project to just make sure that we respected and retained Rena's POV because to me that's the POV that I connect with, going back to my own experiences in high school and how cruel girls can be, but also how smart, political, resourceful, I think often girls are very underestimated at what we're capable of. And in this case, there was a large group of people that were all complicit in Rena's death. But also the strength that Rena had because, I think I didn't really realize the details of the story, but, I stood on the bridge actually when I was in Victoria, when I was filming in Victoria, and what I saw, which really kind of for me was like a punch in the gut, was that when she was initially attacked under that bridge, she got up out of that bridge, and there was a gas station, which is still there, that she could have just gone to and called for help. But she didn't. She crossed that bridge as if she was trying to get home. And it was on when she crossed that bridge that Kelly Ellard was there with Warren, and that they killed her on the other side of the bridge. And I hadn't realized until I was like standing there. I was like, you know, what would make someone not just go towards help? Like help was right there. And I mean, I can only speculate, but like for me, I think she was still trying to protect who she thought were her friends. You know, she didn't want to get, to me, anyone in trouble, because she could have so easily gotten help. But that would have involved telling who those people were. It would have involved not being able to keep quiet. Like, she managed to get herself all the way over to that other side of the bridge, and she was, at that point, it's incredible the strength it would have taken for her to cross that bridge. So, you know, I think, like, again, very real. It's like real stories, real people, and in this sense, I was just very grateful that Hulu decided to tell this story, and that the showrunners and creators of the show decided to take this on, because it's a Canadian story, and yet it hadn't been told yet by Canadians, and in this case, the Americans came in and have given it a platform. So.
Yeah, it's certainly very sad, and I know a bit from my personal experience, obviously not to that extent, but also a friend of mine whose daughter, absolutely stunning, beautiful daughter, but the amount of bullying she experienced, and I won't even get into the details, like she's doing better now, but she was struggling so much, and sort of what you were saying earlier about Lord of the Flies, similar kind of, to the extent where the person questioning that, do I even deserve to, because of the extent of bullying is so severe. But of course, in Rena's case, it was more than, and teenage, like, our minds are so, you just question your own even worth. Like, of course, and of course, if you don't have the close family connection, or don't have that support coming, or sometimes even when you do, like as a kid, you think that whatever the people are saying on the outside is the truth. I'm so glad to hear that you were the one, who got to work on this project, and I can't wait to see this project.
It's a stellar, list of directors, and I followed, I came in after Catherine Hardwicke, who I admired from her work from 13, like from a young age. I've always admired her work, and Geetha Patel, who's an incredible director, did the pilot. So I think, there was, having those women there, seeing them, like, having careers and coming in, it felt welcoming, felt like a safe space. And then, I think also just carrying that responsibility that, when I entered my desk for the first day at the office, they had, Rena's father had written a book, and it was on the table. There's a photo of Rena. So I really carried that with me throughout the shoot, that, this is the responsibility of telling the story right, is like, had extra weight. So it felt very meaningful work. So I felt like, felt very lucky every day to go in and be a part of telling the story.
And when do we expect to see this?
It's a great question. I hope it's this fall.
Yeah.
That's what I think I've heard. But there were delays, and there's been, things happen. So, but by 2024 for sure. I think that probably 23, the fall is a little bit hopeful, but I think next year, it's a limited series. So
yeah, I can't wait. I know I auditioned for it a few times. They brought me in for some journalist roles, but but it's just also nice to see. And I saw your name there, and I was like, yes, Nimisha, yes, I know her. Yeah. Have there been projects or films or series that growing up that you watched that left such an impact on you, that made you go, I need to be someone who needs to be involved in the entertainment industry? Like, have there been like movies or actors' performances that you're like, I want to help bring this out, this sort of performance out of them, and this is how I would have done it? Were there moments like that in your life?
Yeah, I think, I remember My So-Called Life. I remember watching My So-Called Life, like sneaking it, it was on Showcase. But I remember that show being like, oh wow, someone gets it. Like there's someone who, like, there's a group of people that get what it means to be a teenage girl. Granted, the story of Angela and her family is different than my own family, but that's the universality of storytelling, is that even though it was, different, I'm a South Asian girl, but I got, there was something real captured in that show that really stayed with me, and the power of that, to be able to capture a feeling of what it's like to be a teenager. And to see that reflected was really powerful.
Yeah.
Even at that time, I remember being like, this is really exciting.
Yeah.
And so I think, whatever films I'm drawn to, and I remember seeing City of God. That was a hugely impactful film, because again, it's like, what is this? Like, celebration of life, and yet incredibly tragic, violent, dirty, but beautiful, with incredible direction. There's incredible transitions, and yet Fernando Marai also captures, just with non-actors, just the reality of living in poverty, and living in these really life and death situations. So I think it's that collision of, which can happen in scripted, which is like the sweet spot of where you are capturing the truth and yet you are directing it. There's storytelling happening. There's an intention, and there's a group of people coming together, and it's a miracle when that happens. You realize when a group of people can tell a story well. It's it takes a lot of people to make even a bad movie.
Yeah, no, completely.
It takes a lot of heart and soul to do something that even doesn't quite land.
The visual I was getting was shooting Motherland, and you directed one of the episodes, and of course you've done many other shows as well. And wintertime in Vancouver, raining, outdoors, interesting locations, which is where me and Tiara met, and my co-producer. And it was so amazing to see you come in. Of course, most of all, someone that I know. But secondly, to see a South Asian female director who is young, who is the leader, who is coming in there and orchestrating. You're like this conductor, and this is the vision, and this is how I see things. It just made me so happy and so proud to see that, just to witness your journey, like, over the years, and how you're commanding space and you're doing all these projects. Tell me about that, like when you do shows like Motherland, where you're coming in to do one episode or maybe get called back for another, but you're coming in, you're this person, yes, you have this resume and you've done all these exciting things. How do you prepare for that, to come into this? And most of the crews, it's 90% male,
right.
Caucasian male that we're working with. How do you prepare for that?
That's such a great question, Zara. Motherland was my first 1 hour, and I had thought I was going to have something maybe quite, Motherland. I was a huge fan of the show, first of all, and I knew that this was such an incredible opportunity. But I thought the episode was going to be quite small for some reason. I thought maybe they would do a lot of, two-handers in rooms or something, or I would get the flashback episode or something like that. But when I read the script during the pandemic, and I saw that the bulk of the episode happens with huge protest scenes outside, with a lot of almost actually all the cast, I was like, this is a big episode. So I think what was going through my head was, I need to make sure that I try to maintain the level that's already been established on this incredible show, but also as a South Asian female director, this is like an opportunity, and I have to make the most of this opportunity because, you know, it was something I had dreamed of breaking into the 1 hour space, and to have it happen on a show like Motherland was like a dream come true, you know. I love dramas, but this was like VFX, stunt work, action. There was like fight sequences, and there was just so many elements that, you know, to show like, hey, I'm capable. And so I just really prepared. Like I prepared, I over prepared probably, and definitely made mistakes in the process. But I think that now looking back at that episode, you know, I think I'm very proud of that work and proud that I was able to do it at that point in my career. And it definitely is the reason that I have since been able to go on to, you know, like first seasons of The Imperfects, Gotham Knights, because it showed that it showed what I could do. And I definitely tried to make every moment count on that.
One of the things I loved about Motherland is, you know, like, of course, Amanda Tapping was amazing. It's all female leads, very strong female characters. And then when you came in and we get the script in advance to see, you know, what's happening where, when I was like, Nimisha, you know, just the, like, of course, I'm always happy when I see people who I know succeeding, but more so when you are a South Asian female and then you're a director. You're coming in, you know, I was like, yes, hallelujah.
I definitely, you know, I've felt that more and more, is that, you know, I was on Legacies. That was like my first DGA production. And I had a PA come up to me and just say, you know, and she's African American. And she was like, I've never gotten to work with a person of color before as a director. And just that morning, you know, when I'd gone in to do my COVID test, someone had just directed me towards background, because that happens a lot to me when I arrive on set. Like, they're like, oh, the background holding is over there. And I'm like, that's great, good to know, but I'm actually going towards the director trailer, and the director trailer is that way. And I realized, like, again, it's part of the responsibility I carry with me that, you know, I want to do a good job, not just for myself, but because I know that also for me, I can now, my hope is that I can get to a point in my career where I can start to recommend directors who are up and coming, because, you know, as important as it is for women to support women, part of the reason I'm here is because of an incredible producing director named Jeffrey Hunt, who is white, and, you know, he's a white male director with an incredible, you know, list of credits on IMDb. And Jeff Hunt, you know, I met him when I was interviewing for Legacies, and he gave me the opportunity, brought me onto Legacies, which was what got me into the Directors Guild of America. I was already a DGC member, and I'm a proud DGC member, but, you know, a game changer for me in my career, and then brought me on to the first season of Gotham Knights.
Amazing.
And has actively recommended me whenever, and, you know, at first, like, you know, I talked to Jeff about this, I was like, oh, you know, at first you talk about there's quotas, and there's a lot of talk in the industry about, you know, diversity and diversity initiatives, and people feeling, however people feel, like, you know, as a female and person of color, sometimes it's like the assumption is you're here to fill a slot. You're here to be that female, you know, BIPOC voice. So you're ticking that box. But what I loved about Jeff was that, you know, by becoming a part of the DGA, I was like, well, first of all, now I'm competing internationally for those coveted spots. But then what you start to realize is, as you start to build a reputation, is people start to call you back because they want you as a director. And it does start to become more about the job, because it's not enough to be BIPOC and female and show up and lead. You have to
execute, you have to show the results, and
you have to execute,
you know, and the truth is in the pudding. On social media, when I saw like Gotham's Night and like, you know, a few other, just like, I'm like, you're nonstop. And I didn't even know you had a 5-year-old, you know, like, and a dog, and you're in Banff. And I'm just like lucky we could, you know, sit down here today, because I was like, okay, are we going to be able to fit this in? Because you're flying. I'm like, is this still your number? Are you getting my messages? Does she have
can't change the number. You know that, right?
Does she have an assistant now? Like, who do I need to get in touch with? Tell me about working on Gotham's Night. Like, how was that?
Gotham Night was such an awesome experience because, again, when I got the script, there was this huge car chase sequence in the episode. And I was like, oh my God, I've never done this before. This is going to be great. So, and I got to work with Rob Gibbons, who was the DP I'd worked with on Legacies. It was a really nice environment to walk into for me because...
And this is in...
Atlanta.
Okay, in Atlanta.
Yeah, we shot it in Atlanta. The pilot was shot in Toronto.
I saw on your social media that they did they like close off certain blocks off, or like how did they do that?
So we had like streets that we blocked off, and so I got to go back to Atlanta where I'd shot Legacies, and I think it did feel like it was the first time I came back to a team where I'd worked with the team before. Jeff Hunt was the producing director. And so it was like a really great feeling of going into an environment where, you know, you can collaborate because you've worked with people before, from the production design to the costume design team. So it was really a group effort. And I think that for Gotham Nights, you know, you never know if a show's going to be renewed, and the show's not going to be renewed. But for that experience of going all in on that first season and the incredible cast, the showrunners, it was just such a cool atmosphere to work in, and to work in the DC space was like a dream come true, because the first film I ever saw in the theaters was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and like, you know, I think the idea of like world building and the bring comics to life, like I was really excited to like be in Gotham.
Like the little kid inside of you was like, oh.
Yeah, I literally was like,
this
oh my
is
God.
reality. You can't sleep. I can't sleep.
I was like, I'm shooting a scene with Harvey Dent. You know, it's Two-Face. And like, it was like really, really cool. Like, it was just really cool. And really cool to be a part of first season, especially for that show, because that team was a stellar team and so supportive. Yeah, it was a really supportive environment.
Do you feel the pressure when you're doing something like that? You're out of the country, out of your city, you're, you know, in Atlanta, all these people, you have probably, I can imagine the amount of cast and crew and stunts and like everyone. Do you feel like the pressure when you go into it, or like the work that you've done till now, you're like, yeah, I got this? Or like if you do feel the pressure, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think like what you're saying is really the truth of it. To me, to counter any fear, I try to like remind myself fear and anxiety, or it's like almost the same emotion as excitement. You have to just reframe, recalibrate your brain to say, I'm actually really excited, not that I'm really scared of what I'm about to go into. And if I keep telling myself that enough, it starts to click. And then, of course, the other big factor of fighting against, you know, any insecurities or feelings of imposter syndrome or fear is to just do the work. And to me, you know, if I do the work, if I prepare, if I understand the beats, and then the other part of this, if I go in to collaborate, which was a journey for me to understand, especially directing for TV, how do you do that? How do you keep that balance of maintaining respect on set and saying, hey, I am the leader and I can lead, while also gaining that trust and then allowing that ability for everyone to contribute and feel heard. And so finding that balance, I think has been a journey, but I'm so, it's led to incredible collaborations. I got to work on Big Sky with Reba McEntire and Jensen Ackles and Catherine Winning. And you have, like, when you're working with incredible actors and you go in as a director really prepared but ready to collaborate, you can do something magical together. And it's a pressure cooker, and there's not a lot of time, and there's a lot of pressure for sure. But if you go in prepared and open to the possibilities, I think it's really exciting that collaboration is actually where all the magic happens.
Um, any moments like that stand out for you, like 1 to 3 that you could share, or 1 to 2 that you could share, that you were like, someone pinched me. Is this real? Is this like happening? Is this a dream or my real life? Like, am I actually here? Like, have you had moments like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, the first was definitely meeting Oprah with 65, because with 65 Red Roses, that was like, you know, we were these young Canadian documentarians that people didn't really expect that we were going to be able to A, make the film, and B, make a film that was, you know, good enough to get a global platform. And I've said this to you before, but I really, like, the thing I learned within, like, you know, the 2 minutes I had with Oprah was that when you really give people your attention, you you show them that they have value. And I think, you know, the fact that when I met her, there were so many people in this room, and yet she was able to zero in and give you that whatever amount of time. The time doesn't matter. It's that this person really looks at you and sees you and is listening to you, and you can feel that. And it makes you carry that within yourself. It gives you a feeling of like, I have value here. I am, you know, I can do this. Like, somebody's looking at me saying, you know, I loved your film. You did a great job. This is going to be, you know.
I'm getting like chills. Like,
Yeah.
this is Oprah. Like,
Yeah, when she does, you know, and I think that's the O effect. And I think that, you know, you can always strive in your own life to make the people in your own life feel that way, because she was able to do that for me within 2 minutes. You know, I definitely think Ali Sweeney, I remember when I got onto Chronicle Mysteries, that was a big moment of going, okay, I've moved from children's space into the MOW space. And you're just like, when you meet, I think it's people. I can think of these people that I've met who, like, made me feel like I can do this. I'm not dreaming alone here. Somebody sees potential in me and is going to help me get a little bit further. And it's not even to their benefit, really, aside from that they want to, you know, I think that it's that paying it forward feeling. And I've definitely benefited from that in my career. And so, you know, Oprah, Alison Sweeney, you know, giving me the opportunity. I remember meeting with her in Vancouver and just feeling I could be myself. I could share what I wanted, what my goal was. And she, you know, she really believed in me and gave me a chance. And it definitely changed my career. And same with Jeff Hunt. I think when I got onto that Gotham Knights set, by the time I got into that Gotham Knights set, he gave me some early advice on legacies. He said, don't say no to anything. You know, just keep working. Right now is about just showing what you can do. Just don't say no. And it was such great advice, because I just didn't say no for, you know, a good 2 years. And then as a result, you know, it starts to have a ripple effect. And then, you know, it's a reputation-based industry. So now I kind of feel like I've got some real champions that I've been able to meet. And thank God my husband held down the fort with our son and was able to work from home.
it's so beautiful and inspiring, because it's so amazing to see someone you've known blossom like this, and not just blossom, and also I feel like you're like the same person. Like, you know, I'm like, what is that, 15 years? Like,
Yeah, it's been
like,
15 years.
you know,
yeah.
and truly inspiring. Like, one of my friends, Benjamin Watson, he's like number 3 or 4 in this J.J. Abrams show for HBO Max. And when he booked it, came and visited me when I was living in Paris, I was so happy. Like, it was my booking. And he wasn't even excited. He's like, yeah, when I'm on set, I'll like, and I'm like, you're coming over. I'm going to bake for you. We're going to do this. We're going to celebrate before you go. And I'd taken a break even from auditioning. I was feeling like burnt out. But I feel like when people around me find that success, and especially, you know, I do have to say in the minority group, because I've seen, like, I remember 15 years ago, the stuff I was auditioning for was versus what I audition for now. I'm so grateful that's shifted and those stories are changing. Why is it so important to be a storyteller?
I mean, I don't have any other skills, so I can't really do anything else. Um, I think that again, I think it's about feeling like you have something to contribute, and everybody has it. Everybody has that thing, that talent, that specialness about them, whether it's, there's that quote, like, if you're going to be a custodian, be the best custodian. If you're going to, whatever you do, you just have to do it with a sense of purpose and intention. And I think that for me, storytelling is in alignment with who I am, what my talents are, when you are given a gift, your responsibility is to use it, right? And to not just give up when it gets hard, there are a lot of sacrifices involved in being a storyteller beyond, the fun and glam of it. It's a lot. It is but to me, even from 65 Red Roses all the way to Under the Bridge, it's like the motivating factor is I only get this one shot to tell the story. I owe it not only to myself but to everyone else to make the whole team, the crew. There's so many people involved. I have to give it my all. And for me, storytelling is that channel for that. Like, I can get up in the morning and say, yes, I will give this my all. And no matter what, not quit, even if it feels really hard the rise up, being a woman, a BIPOC woman, that was not an easy hustle. It wasn't an easy hustle to get here. There were a lot of opportunities where it was easier to stay in documentary, or easier to stay in unscripted, easier to stay in the children's box, the MOW box. Like, people want to put you in a box. And the reason that I didn't stay in those boxes is because I believed I had a bigger purpose than that. And if I don't follow that, what a waste, right? So, yeah.
I want to talk about that a bit because I'll speak for myself. The inner critic comes on and, comes in and is like, oh, but like, who are you? Who do you think you are? For me, it will be like when you're on camera talent and it's like the beauty standards and age and is there room for me? Like, because we are like right now doing the box thing, it's like, okay, they already have someone who kind of looks like me or whatever, versus to throw your hat in the ring. Just keep going for it. I think it was Alex Ponowick who said, sitting here, he was saying, you stay in this industry long enough, your turn is going to come. And I think several people I've had conversations with, they're like, it's also about like who's around. Obviously you have to have the talent. It's not just, there's a lot of things that have to be there. So how do you overcome that, or do you not have that at all? How do you,
no,
is my
I think
question.
Everyone has that. I think it's what you're describing is like, there's so much doubt, right? And to like cut that noise down is to have a bigger vision for yourself. And, I think that's why it's like you have to I have to keep motivated by keep striving for the next thing and not be complacent either. And I think, for me now, it's like, what gives me the audacity to say, I want to now have my own show. I want to have a show that I created. I want it to have a South Asian lead. The show that I've been developing with Mark is called New Country. It's about a South Asian country singer. And it's like
South Asian country singer. Oh my goodness.
She's a South Asian medical student that decides to, pursue her dream of becoming a country singer in the early 90s. And, I think a lot of people would look at that and go, just be happy. Just be happy with the fact that you get to work, you're a director, that was like the goal, like, just stay in your lane. But the whole point of this is to just keep pushing through there, because there's always another barrier you have to push through, right? Or another challenge you've set for yourself, right? So to me, it's like you've got to think big, and then have that vision, and then have a plan of how am I going to get there, right? And to me, that plan is like, why, while I was working nonstop the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that all that work is always just really pushing myself to set aside that extra time to do that other thing. So so that you're ready with that other thing, because if you just relax or go, oh, hey, I made it, then to me, all that energy it's just gone.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to build momentum. It's so quick to watch it fizzle away, right? And it can just be one. And if you let that one negative person or voice or critic, inner critic or outer critic get to you, they will just pull you down, right? They're waiting to pull you down. So your job is you have to just keep motivating yourself. If you can't be positive, to me, it's about having that dream, that vision, and just always reminding yourself of it.
It sounds like you're always trying to outdo yourself almost in a way. You're always, when you're saying that moving out of this children's realm box and like the MOW or the unscripted, and you're constantly like, okay, what's next? Can I challenge myself? Can I grow there? Yeah. It's almost like you want to live in that uncomfortable zone, because it's easy to be like, I'm comfortable here. I've had those periods where I'm like, okay, yes, I have this thing, I'm auditioning and this and that, and my time is occupied. Versus like, what is the calling of my heart? What is my heart's desire? Like, can I actually say it out loud? And sometimes for me, it's almost like scary to say, okay, I'm going to write it down and put it next to my bed and have it there. Like, what do I want? Like, for me, one of the things was like, I want to see in one way or another to like, I want to have these conversations, because for me, it's very selfish to have this conversation, because I feel it's this energy exchange, and I love to know how people who I admire, how they're succeeding, how they're thinking. And then I wrote that down. And the other thing was like getting into voice. And then somehow almost every month, it's just like happening.
It's happening. I think it's that I love the idea of writing it down. I think that is really important, because then it becomes real. It's not just like this like empty voice in your head that you're telling yourself. It's like, oh, I've written it down. But I also think you hit on something really important, which is being okay with being uncomfortable. You asked me earlier about being in Atlanta, or like, I think that I'm not scared of being uncomfortable. I know if I'm uncomfortable, it probably means I'm growing in a direction I need to grow. And so the more uncomfortable I am, the more I feel like I'm going in the right direction. And so it's like, but I think a lot of people will avoid being uncomfortable at all costs. Avoid the public speaking, avoid the interview, they'll avoid, and then they want, and I understand it, I see it. But it's like, to have a marriage, to have a child, to have a family, have a career, it just means being able to operate, or you're not always, super comfortable and super well rested. But to me, it's like so worth it, right? If you can keep a sense of the bigger picture. But I think being uncomfortable, you mentioned that, and that really resonates with me. Like, I spent a lot of the last 2 years being really uncomfortable, and that's where I grew the most. I learned the most through those processes, yeah.
And I love what you said, that what Jeffrey said to you, say yes and just keep showing up. I think that the person who keeps showing up, just, things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Things are,
but I'm not interested in waiting.
Yeah.
I also don't believe in that. I don't believe that if I wait, something will happen for me. I understand, and I learned that probably from Ava, from 65 really early on. You have to put it into action, right? It's actions oriented, and that energy then can build, right? But if you don't, if you're frozen and you're scared and you're paralyzed, you're not moving, right?
Or if you're just waiting for things to happen.
Yeah.
I think, it's that balance of like, in spirituality, they talk about surrender, but then also taking action comes from a place of faith, because faith without action and works is dead. Because you can, manifest sitting at home meditating all you want, but it's like, until you're going out there, getting uncomfortable, taking those meetings, applying for those jobs, doing the auditions, mentorship, internships, whatever, it's not going to happen.
Right. And just to build off of that too, like there is a thoughtfulness in it. It's not to say, just go do things with like just rush and do things. I think there is value in stopping and thinking about what is it that I want, and asking yourself those questions, writing those questions down, having a plan, setting out goals, having quiet reflection. Absolutely. Mental health is important. Health is important, right? I don't think that, I don't think that it's like just go in and just like give everything all the time. You do need to protect something for yourself so that you have something left to give, right?
Completely.
Because burnout is real. But I think that it's just, again, having an intention. I know I keep coming back to that, but I think it's about taking the time to figure out what it is that you really want. Because I also think that when it's ego motivated, it's always going to lead to disaster. When it's solely financially motivated, it's going to lead to disaster, because that's not the way things really work, right? You have to have some other thing driving you for why do you want to actually do this.
What inspires you in life? What?
I was like, is the timer on?
No. I'm always like, okay, what I'm asking you next. I always prefer to organically be in the moment instead of like having this idea of these specific questions.
Totally.
Even though, like part of us doing this is like, I think everyone brings a different flair and energy, and I let that organically flow versus like, okay, these are the questions I need to hit. But because the show is called Inspired Life Vancouver, I love to ask everyone what inspires them in life. Like, where do you draw inspiration from?
Definitely just, I draw inspiration. It can come from everywhere. I think from friendships. I think I'm starting to realize like having a whole life, having a bigger life is really important in terms of keeping me inspired and motivated. But if I have to say immediately right now, my son is a huge source of inspiration because he's 5, and he is wholly there in the now, because that's what children are. There's no like, they're not carrying all this baggage of what happened a week ago. They're 100% in it. And I think that has been, at this point in my life, has been an incredible gift, because it reminds me to stay in the moment. And I think that being in the now, like being inspired by the now, I see things more clearly. I hear things better, especially when I'm around him, because I also know it's fleeting and it's going to be gone, and the moment's gone. And so you really have to not be sad about it being over or regret. You want to just enjoy that moment for what it is. And I think that I learned that a lot from him.
And I'm sure when he's like, oh, wow, look at this sunflower or this like bug, everything is new and exciting.
Yeah. And it's like, the focus is just like, it reminds me that we have that in us.
Yeah.
We just get further away from it because of all the noise, right? And the voices in our head. But he's just really there, right? And and I think that when I'm doing my work the best, I don't meditate. I know I need to meditate, but when I am really in it in the moment behind that monitor, or in that moment of blocking or whatever, and documentary filmmaking really made me train well for it, is like there's nothing else. You don't hear anything else. There is no doubt. You're really in that moment. You're free because you're 100% doing the thing that's happening right in front of you, and that's all you're caring about. And so it's the closest that I've gotten to that meditation is filmmaking or directing, because it allows me to just be free of all of that.
That's beautiful. I love that. Any advice for aspiring filmmakers, directors that you would like to share?
I have 2 pieces of advice. One is say yes, because I'll pay that forward, from Jeff Hunt's advice book, and Tina Fey also, because she says it in Bossy Bands. But I would also say that this is especially for people who are, I'd say find the community, in whatever it is you're doing. And if I'm speaking specifically the filmmaking community, and sorry, you're very good at this. There's a reason I'm here right now is because, it's about building relationships with people. And when you build genuine relationships with people, which isn't about what can I get from you or what are they trying to get out of me, I'm talking about going beyond that. When you actually become a part of a community, you can leave that community and come back and they will welcome you with open arms wherever you go, wherever you travel, because this is really about relationships. And again, filmmaking is about collaboration. And it's about a team of people. And so what you start to realize is you want a group of people who are positive people and who are inspiring you, but it's coming naturally because, again, you're in it for the right reasons, which is that you want to create something meaningful and positive together. And so to me, I'd say to people, try to enter into your ventures trying to actually build community. And if you do that, you'll get a lot in return, you'll find. At least that's been my experience.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. I feel like so many gems in there, and we could certainly talk to you for hours.
Thanks for having me.
Is there a particular spot in Vancouver and surrounding area that you like to go to relax or get inspired, or whether with your dog or your family or just by yourself?
My parents live in White Rock, so I'm very fortunate. They live very close to the water, and I know that over the years I've lived in I've been in Toronto, LA. I've been for work now, traveled all over the place, India. When I stand on the edge of the beach, usually if it's raining, the beach is empty, and I think that you kind of can really get quiet. And the world feels like it's endless. It feels like the water will just continue, and the sky meets the water, ocean meets sky. And I think sometimes you feel, for me at least, I get to feel really small. And in those moments where I feel really small, that's where I think things start to get quiet, and you start to feel like, this is one life, I have one chance. I want to be here. I want to do whatever I can while I'm here, with whatever I have to give, make sure that I give it and leave it behind. So I think there's this, in White Rock, usually if it's gray, a rainy day, edge of the water, there's usually, we live in a beautiful place. But to me, that's a very special place for me.
A day like today.
Yeah, a day like today.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like a very Oprah answer, No, it's beautiful, it's very moving, and certainly I'm feeling very inspired, and I hope our guests are as well. Thank you so much, Nimisha.
Thank you for having me.
It's been such an honor and pleasure having you and having this conversation, and I honestly feel so proud to see you succeed and just these amazing things you're doing. It gives me hope, and it also inspires me to in ways that I may be holding myself back, because I certainly think as artists we can be our own worst critics, and how we can keep leaning in, and I think that's what I'm getting from you is go forward, whether the answer is yes or no, they're going to open the door or not. You just keep going with that intention and with that desire to serve as a storyteller. And I just really hear that passion for storytelling is just ultimately what I'm getting. And I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing. So thank you so much. If you guys are inspired, make sure to get in touch. Thank you.